the unconscious is always listening. It's the world being reflected back to you. And what's the world composed of in part is your mental energy. Your mental energy is being reflected back to you. And that's what you see in lucid dreaming, is that your beliefs and expectations are reflected back to you. You see that you get to select your focus and your intent within the lucid dream. And so you begin to realize that.
So we're back at it again, and quite frankly, Robert, I'm really blown away by the mastery that you've acquired with such a specific element of beyond mind. Lucid dreaming, lucidity as we refer to it within alchemy, is so potent. What would be the first stage for someone to really start to create an awareness of this type of mastery?
Right. What I would say, it helps if you learn to love dreams and dreaming. If you love it, then it's not work. Then it's not a hassle. Then it's not another thing to do. It's something that you look forward to, that you enjoy, that you expect to be amazed and blown away by. So learn to love dreaming and also lucid dreaming, because sometimes people try to put them up on a hierarchy, like look at lucid dreaming up here. It's so incredible. Some of my most profound dreams have just been regular dreams, and I've just received incredible information. So first, love lucid dreaming, love dreaming, and you're on the right path.
Yeah, I mean, you make such a good point, because today the experiencer, which is just most people that are in this space of awareness that we teach people stuff, they want something that can be applied instantaneously. And what's the fastest route without me having to pray to some type of god? That's kind of what I've noticed. I think there's pitfalls to everything when someone attempts to squeeze their subjectivity into a universal thing that I believe is what you're teaching this wisdom from. So is there a way that someone can sort of start with that intimate relationship to want to dream, to create that lucid experience? And then would you say an entry level would be a meditative state? Because some people are like, blurring the lines of precognitive, remote viewing, clairvoyance, mediumship channeling. I mean, I personally put them all in a very similar category as I teach people. But what about yourself? How would you categorize this to help someone understand it?
Right. So that's one of the reasons why you want to learn to love dreaming, because if you begin to love dreaming, then you'll see that on occasion you're likely having precognitive dreams, and on occasion you're getting clairvoyant or telepathic information occasionally, not all the time, just on occasion. So that's why you first have to get to that. But then what I would say is the important thing is realizing that inside all of us is an inner educator. And one way that inner educator communicates with us is in dreaming, and also more easily in lucid dreaming. And so if you begin to shift your belief system that it's not chaos, it's not just wild, meaningless images and all, that there's actually something more to it. If you begin to shift your thinking, then all of a sudden you'll realize, oh, I'm actually being educated here. I'm being shown things. I'm being pointed to stuff that I have to deal with to clear out the way to make my progress easier.
And so clearing out the way in the sense of, a limited perception of, subjective psyche, as opposed to something more universal and louder than that. How loud is an intuitive state when it hits you on the head?
Right. So here's what I would say is being cleared out. It is to your point, but I'd phrase it a little bit differently, such that I would say that my dreaming and lucid dreaming inner awareness has shown me sometimes I have limiting ideas. I have limiting beliefs. So it's trying to show me something, but I say, no, 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 that's not reality. And it says, yes, this is reality. And I go, no, no. And finally it pushes through and helps me break through limiting beliefs. The other thing that I learned as I went further along is it showed me that I had to resolve fears, that fears were the mind killer, that fears were keeping me from growing. And if I could resolve the fears, that then I'd progress easier and faster. In fact, in some of my lucid dreams, about, I don't know, year 15 or whatever, I began to hear the words trust, nothing to fear. Or sometimes in a lucid dream, I'd see a banner in the sky that would say trust, nothing to fear. Because I want to tell you that fear keeps us in this comfort zone. And we're lucidly aware, we can do whatever the heck we want, but we don't realize it. We're staying inside the boundaries of that comfort zone. Until we begin to break through our fears, then the comfort zone begins to expand. And then you break through some more fears and the comfort zone get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'll tell you, it's profound. So that's where the issue of clearing out the way is. Limiting beliefs and fears and concerns that are truly unjustified.
I mean, that goes beyond any logical mind. I mean, it's the rite of passage. Within Taoism, that's a fundamental dissolving of self at the basement level. I think that I think maybe the audience needs to understand how you command your reality through this. Hey, look, I want to let go of my belief, my disbelief, my limited belief, my identity, and that you can do this so softly, so easily, so intimately through dreams. People can't imagine that, hey, if I command this before I go to sleep, it will actualize. Could you elaborate on that?
So you have to realize that I taught myself how to lucid dream in 1975. And then the scientific evidence appeared in 1980, 1981. So I had like 5 years of exploring this without any kind of outside influence in any large degree. But what I began to see in lucid dreams, the lucid dream would reflect back to me my belief and expectation. So if I saw a guy in a black jacket and thought he was a gangster in the lucid dream, he'd turn around and he'd have a gun, and there to rob me. If I saw the same guy and thought he looked like a priest, he'd turn around and have a Bible and a crucifix. You began to see your beliefs and expectations were being reflected back to you. If I thought it would be easy to fly through this wall, I would fly through it because I knew it was dream stuff. But if I flew up to it and thought, wow, that really looks solid, I would hit it and bounce off, even though it was made out of dream stuff. So in lucid dreaming, you begin to see your beliefs and expectations reflected back to you. And then if you're smart, you start to see, that's also happening in waking life as well. If I believe this, it gets reflected back to me. And here's the way you can play with this. You don't even have to be a lucid dreamer. And I bring this up in the second chapter, or the final chapter of my second book. What I ask people to do is this: find a neutral belief. One, you don't even think about it. It's so bloody neutral, like how funny you are or how great your hair is or whatever. You don't even think about it. You're just neutral about it. 10 times a day for 1 minute, focus on it being supersized. I'm the funniest person ever in the entire world. There's no one funny than me. And just go on in your mind, just how incredibly funny you are or whatever. I'll tell you, within 4, 5, 6 days of doing this, 10 minutes a day, just for 1 minute, 10 times, just reminding yourself, supersizing this neutral belief, all of a sudden the world will start to reflect back to you. You'll say something totally innocuous and everyone in the room will scream with laughter. Or you'll, how great my shoes are. And within 4 or 5 days, people, oh, where'd you get those shoes? Those are great shoes. Oh, those shoes look so comfortable. And you're thinking like, what's going on here? It's the world being reflected back to you. And what's the world composed of in part is your mental energy. your mental energy is being reflected back to you. And that's what you see in lucid dreaming, is that your beliefs and expectations are reflected back to you. You see that you get to select your focus and your intent within the lucid dream. And so you begin to realize that, like the famous hypnotherapist Milton Erickson said, the unconscious is always listening. And so that's when you begin to get more mindfully aware what's going through my head that's being reflected out there in the world. And once you start to see that, then you really get to kind of, oh, that's why people want people to kind of master themselves by kind of mindfully examining their thoughts, and all this. It's one of those things. But when I think of beliefs, I think of habitual ideas. These are ideas that we just repeatedly tell ourselves. We accept them as truths, even though they're not truths. They're just beliefs. And if they were truths, everyone would have them. But they're not truths. We have it. It's a belief. We think of it as a truth. You have to begin to examine these things, because some of them let in a lot of energy and others of them filter out energy that would be helpful for your life and your creativity and your growth and all that.
It's amazing the parallels with mastered states like this. I mean, within Taoism, we refer to a macro to a micro. The cosmos is the very physical crystallization of self. And by mastering and harnessing that, you can then be the master creator, keeper of your reality. And
it helps if you see the truth of it. If you see the truth of it, then you're no longer resisting it. We spend so much energy resisting stuff. And once you come to understand, oh yeah, this is truly how it works, whether you're dreaming, lucid dreaming, or waking, it's, this mind is really doing something, and we have to understand what it's doing if we're going to go with the way instead of be in opposition to it.
Now, you just mentioned if you're lucid dreaming or you're just consciously operating now, how have you translated that into a tangible effect? We refer to that as immortality crystallized in the material. You're altering the material through your conscious manipulation of the fabric. How do you apply that?
So us lucid dreamers call it lucid living. So I'll give you an example. So that's when you take the realizations that are occurring to you in the lucid dream state and bring them into the waking state, and then try them out in the waking state and see if they work. So right when I was writing my first book around 2008, one summer morning, I was out in the garden, and then I started to think, oh crap, August and September are coming, and my hay fever will return, and I'll go through 6 weeks of just miserable coughing and sneezing and unable to sleep and the whole thing for 6 weeks. But then the other part of me thought, you're writing a book on lucid dreaming, and you have a chapter in there about how you can heal yourself physically in a lucid dream. So at that moment, I decided I'm going to lucid live a healing of this. And so here's what I did. You don't have to be a lucid dreamer to do this. Anyone watching can do this. You don't even have to be a lucid dreamer. But here's what I knew. First, I became mindfully aware of every time I thought about hay fever or began to fear August and September. First, you got to notice it. Then I told myself, no, not anymore. I'm not buying this anymore. Then here's the most important part that people don't do. You got to tell yourself where you want to go, what you want to experience. And that's when I realized, what's my real intent here? My real intent is to breathe easily and naturally. So every time I started to think about hay fever, or there'd be a TV commercial, hay fever is coming, take this drug, I would first mindfully notice, oh. Then I'd say, nope. Then I'd say, this year, I breathe easily and naturally. I'll tell you, the first year, 70% reduction in my symptoms. The next year, a 90% reduction. The year after that, 95% reduction. Now I don't even have hay fever, don't even think about it anymore. And that is eliminating a negative belief. Now I have a new belief. I breathe easily and naturally. I don't care what month of the year it is. I don't care how much pollen is out there. I breathe easily and naturally. So that's healing yourself without doing it in a lucid dream, without going to a doctor, without taking medicine or whatever. I healed myself because I healed my thinking. And that's fundamentally something that anyone can do, but you got to be mindfully aware of when those little sneaky thoughts are sneaking in there. Oh yeah, August is coming. Oh darn, I'll have hay fever. And all.
Interesting. You mentioned, you there,
Yep.
Robert?
Yep.
You mentioned hypnosis at one point. Do you use that as a technique to leverage and sort of yank on the fabric a little bit?
Well, I was a curious young guy growing up. I just had a little bit of a mystical bent. I remember I was probably 17 or 18 years old and went over to the nearby big city about an hour away and learned self-hypnosis from a hypnotist. And what I began to do after that, I would do self-hypnosis. And I just think self-hypnosis is just one tool in the tool chest. In one sense, we're all hypnotizing ourselves all the time because of this inner self chatter we constantly tell ourselves. But the beautiful thing about self-hypnosis is you begin to see, wow, if I change my chatter, things on occasion change out there in the outer world. And so, to me nowadays, I think of meditation and hypnosis and a number of things. I just put them all, they're just different names for different things. So anyway,
they kind of all meld back into the same pot.
Yeah, they all have their particular characteristics, but in another way, their consciousness, ways to play with consciousness, and so therefore they're all have that fundamental value.
Yeah, it's kind of like an entry level. The break in the veil becomes softer and weaker, and then you pierce it.
Yep.
And there's just no limit to what the potential is. So when you're talking about lucid living, how does it just cross over? Because consciously for me, outer body, inner body, dualistic, centric, non-centric, it's all the same. I can experience a visceral, somatic, kinesthetic experience as a vivid dream, which I'm doing right now. So how I communicate with my spirit world is the very way that I enter into, what I call the dialogue to the monologue. Information is very, very rich, and it's repeatable, and it can be verifiable in something that it doesn't seem like it should be, but it's like reach out and touch someone and pull it in, and it's very, very awakening. So do you have a similar vision or clear sense, let's refine it as that, from conditioning yourself through lucid dreaming? As we're awake, do you feel the same experiences?
Right. So here's an example, and I apologize if I'm repeating myself from a previous episode.
Not at all.
But here's an example. So I can't recall exactly when this occurred, maybe 10 years ago. So I'm meditating in the middle of the afternoon in my favorite chair in the living room. And I get down deep, and all of a sudden, I can feel my inner self, my inner awareness, just like in a lucid dream. In a lucid dream, I would ignore all the dream figures, and I'd just reach out and say, hey, dream, show me something important for me to see. Or, hey, dream, let me experience universal energy, or something like that. But anyway, I'm meditating. I know I'm meditating. I know I'm sitting in the living room meditating, and I can feel my inner awareness. So what I did was just like I would do in a lucid dream. I reach out with an open-ended question, and I ask, hey, inner awareness, what do you have to say to me? And I heard just as clearly as you and I talking, we want you to send $10,000 to your friend Paul back in your hometown. And in the meditative. I thought, what? And I just immediately got out of meditation. I thought, boy, that was weird. That was really strange. What was that all about? My hometown's about 8-hour drive away. So, and Paul is a friend of mine back in my hometown. The next day, I'm meditating again. This time I get down really deep again, and now I can feel the energy of my friend Paul's deceased mother, and I can feel my inner awareness. And I reach out with an open-ended question. Inner awareness, what do you have to say to me? And now I hear, we want you to send $10,000 to your friend Paul back in your hometown. I come out of the meditation and I tell my wife, if I ever had the same dream night after night, I would do whatever I was being shown, just because, to have it repeat like that is obviously important. I said, this was very specific and all, and this is a lot of money too. So I wanted to talk with you. My wife's really sharp. She goes, well, let's send Paul a note with a check for $1,000 and say, Paul, we're your good friends. If you need help, we'll help you. So we write the checks, put it in the mail. 4 days later, he gets the envelope. He calls me up. And at first I can't understand him. He's so emotional. And finally he calms down, and he told me that a week earlier he had gone to his mom's gravesite, and he screamed at it. If somebody didn't help him, he was going to kill himself. And I go, okay, Paul, what's going on? Why do you need $10,000? And he said, you don't know this, but 2 months ago, my dad fell in the bathroom, broke his hip. Now he's in a nursing home where they say they're going to teach him how to walk again, but I can tell they'll never teach him how to walk again, and he'll die in this nursing home. So I want $10,000 to put on a disabled bathroom so that my dad can come live with me. The state of Kansas will give 40 hours of nursing assistance each week. And I'm going to teach my dad how to walk again. And he says, if I don't do this, it's killing me inside. We sent him the money. His dad came and lived with him for 6.5 years before he passed away in his 90s. But anyway, in a lucid dream, you can reach out to your inner awareness. Sometimes you'll hear a non-visible voice respond with, the words or, an answer to your query. Sometimes the entire lucid dream will change and you'll get kind of a visual response, a symbolic response as an answer to your query. So I'm familiar with that. I've done that tons of times in my lucid dreams. But to have it begin to also see, oh yeah, now that I've worked that ability in the lucid dream state, now I realize that it exists, and now it's starting to filter through in the waking state, especially when my mind is kind of either in neutral or intentionally headed in a meditative way, deeper and deeper.
Yeah, it's a conditioning. That's how I refer to it within alchemy. You just condition yourself to a state that is conducive for something that is energy potential, that is vibratory frequential and holds resonance. And once you really find that sweet spot, it's strange how all this stuff sort of, in many ways, what you're speaking on would be referred to within a psychological sort of hypnotherapist state of ideomotor response, or some of my friends, remote viewers, refer to them as ideograms. It's a spark of divinity that speaks through the body, that gives you answers. Tarot cards, Ouija boards, whatever you want to call it. If you commit to it, like you're explaining, the information will come to you immediately.
So another way you see this, and what I'd encourage some people to do, because a lot of people, we're all trained in this Western way for the most part, and we want to experiment, and we want to explore, and we want to rationally prove, and all that kind of stuff. So here's one thing that I just ask dreamers to do. So if you begin to pay attention to your dreams, you'll see that there's certain dream figures that reappear. Maybe it's your parents or, a friend from high school or whatever it is. That they're just recurring dream figures. Let's call them that. But here's what I want you to do. If you dream of a friend that you haven't seen in a year or two, or maybe the last time you talked to them was 6 or 9 months ago or whatever, When the dream comes to an end and you get a sense of it, reach out to them. Reach out to them on social media or via email, and ask them, hey, last night I dreamt this. Is there something going on in your current life that connects with this? So here was an example. A friend of ours who's a college professor, he was with my wife back in her doctoral years and stuff. Anyway, I never dream of the guy. Maybe once every 5 years I dream of he and his wife. Anyway, I see him in a dream, and his hand is completely red from this spot up, completely red. And he seems really happy about it in the dream. And I'm thinking, that's kind of weird. I mean, your hand is totally blood red. What's going on? And his wife's walking along, and there's some other guy. Anyway, in the morning, I knew something was up. And so I asked my wife, would you call Leon and ask him, what's the deal with your right hand? And my wife calls him up, and he goes, oh, you don't know this, but I'm having carpal tunnel surgery, here in the week. And I'm really happy about it because the surgeon told me that he might keep me awake so I can watch what's happening. And all. And I thought, oh my gosh. But here's what I'm trying to get to. These dream figures that are so rare, people that you know, but they rarely appear in your dreams. If you see something, see what the dream says, send them the dream and ask them what's going on in your current life, like that. And sometimes you'll learn about, oh, they're going to have a child, or, oh, they're getting divorced, or, oh, he just got a, giant promotion at work, or whatever it is. That's when you'll start to see that inner information exists, and it doesn't come, you don't read it in the paper, don't read it in the email, whatever. It's coming on an inner level, and it's there and available. And so you pick it up in the dream state naturally. That's one of the purposes I feel for dreaming, is this inner communication that connects us all in this interconnected oneness that we're part of. And also you'll see it if you get good at meditation. You'll get down deep enough where you'll connect with this kind of information stream, and sometimes pick up stuff that there's no way no way that you would normally pick up. It's just too surprising.
Now, what would you suggest would be a good ritual for someone who feels like they sleep too deep? I don't remember my dreams. I can't, I don't know. I just can't. I mean, I either don't sleep enough or I sleep too much. I'm so deep, I can't remember. What would you suggest would be some type of ritual that could evoke that? Maybe hot chamomile tea. I don't know. What are your go-tos for preparing yourself for liftoff?
I remember I was giving a talk in Colorado, and a young guy raised his hand and said, I haven't remembered a dream in 10 years. And I asked him, how old are you? And he says, I'm 26. I said, what happened to you when you were 16? And he looked at me and he says, oh, my parents had a horrible divorce. Mm-hmm. And I go, look, sometimes we just shut down dreaming. We're having enough difficulty dealing with waking life. We don't need any more hassles. And so we shut down our dream life. And other times we just, get too busy in our waking world, in our waking job or whatever, and begin to neglect dreaming. Or even worse, the first thing we do when we wake up is we grab our bloody cell phone and see if there's any text messages. So what I suggested to the young man, I said, look, tonight, tell your dreaming self, your inner awareness, hey, dreaming self, I'm ready to recall my dreams. Just make that your intent before you go to sleep. The next morning when he saw me, he started dancing in the hallway. He said the entire night, it was like 1,000 slideshow of all the dream images that he had missed, in the last 10 years. He said it was just one after the other. He said he was so happy when he woke up and realized that he hadn't lost the ability to dream or recall his dream. He just neglected them all those years. So basically, that's what I would say. Tell your inner self you're ready to remember. And then as soon as you wake, spontaneously in the middle of the night, think, what was I just dreaming? Because you got to capture it in that first 5 or 10 seconds. Otherwise, it'll evaporate. So if you do that, normally you can get back on track. There's one other thing you could do as well if you wanted to. Hey, dreaming self, let me remember the most incredible dream of the night. are the most happiest dream of the night. Some people have had nightmares and they've shut down their dream recall. And so they have to ask for the happiest or the most, incredible and all. But anyway, that's what I would do to get back on the dream recall path.
And there's no recommendation to quiet the biology, which is really controlled by the finite mind.
Well,
anything that you could do to sedate, to shut down the system. So
yeah. There are things you can do, of course, to quiet the system, and probably any good therapist or anyone would just naturally know. Sometimes you can do 4x4 breathing. Any kind of breathing technique before you go to sleep. It'll quiet the energy, quiet the anxiety, and all that kind of stuff. So 4x4 breathing is great. Sometimes people would say a mantra if they're into mantras. There's certain things that can begin to kind of, if nothing else, settle the mind and all. The other thing, it's fun. Sometimes when I do dream incubation, where I focus on something before I go to sleep, so I can get an answer regarding that issue. I do a technique practiced by my friend Ed Kellogg. And this is what he does. He says, okay, before you do the dream incubation, as you're laying there in bed, imagine that the entire waking day was written out on a giant chalkboard, graphically displayed or written out, however, it doesn't really matter. And then grab your eraser and begin to erase the entire day. Erase all the day residue that Sigmund Freud would talk about. Get rid of all the day residue. Let it all go. Just let it all turn to dust. And then do your dream incubation. Oh, tonight in my dream, show me where I should vacation next. Tonight in my dream, show me one simple thing I can do to improve my health. And by clearing out the day residue, you kind of clear out the noise and the signal comes through more easily.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it's good to not rely on any exogenous sort of like stimulants or things that tend to control the system. If you can command it, it can be created. I mean, when I say command, I mean you're speaking on a dialogue. Most people would consider that self-talk kind of like on the verge of like some level of broken psychology, but it's actually a very soft way that everyone has at some point in their life had this sort of level of self-talk. But can you accept that is an entry into something greater?
Right. And that's why, occasionally in the world of dreaming and lucid dreaming, people will talk about supplements and all this kind of stuff. But for my purpose, lucid dreaming taught me how to use the mind. And so relying on physical things to learn how to use the mind, to me, it's just like, it's one step forward, one step back. I encourage people to use the mind. But if there is one supplement that someone wants to use, and this would come into like lucid dreaming to help them become more consciously aware in the dream state. Here's one supplement I think that I can recommend without any concern on any level. And that is something that we all use, which is caffeine. There's caffeine in tea, a little bit of caffeine in tea, a little bit of more caffeine in coffee, and various drinks and stuff. So what I would suggest is sometimes, especially for those lucid dreamers out there listening, who want a little added kind of impetus to help them with their lucid dreaming, and a lot of this is just expectation effect going on. But anyway, it's kind of a placebo in one way. But what I would suggest is before you go to sleep, drink 2 ounces of just regular hot tea, and you'll have enough of that little bit of caffeine in you that it won't keep you from falling asleep, but it'll be enough to kind of stimulate the physical consciousness to kind of perk back up a little bit in the dream state, and hopefully help you realize, wait a second, this is too weird. How did I get here? This has to be a dream. That kind of thing. But
now,
really, that's about the only supplement you'll ever hear me recommending.
So that sounds fascinating as a stimulant. It's an interesting thing. You're kind of contradicting a lot of process for sleep. For many people, they wouldn't. They'd be like
Yeah,
caffeine.
I'm just talking an ounce or two, so more is not better in this case.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
as little as possible is actually probably better.
yeah.
But, but sometimes people need this expectation effect, and I'll tell you how that works. You know, when I wrote my first book a year or two later, a fan from Florida, he said, "Oh, I invented this dream mask, and I'm going to send you the prototype, and lights will flash in, red lights will flash in your eyes, you know, while you're dreaming, and help you become lucidly aware." So anyway, you know, this guy sends me this mask. It all looks very nicely done. I try to program the bloody thing, put it on my head before I go to sleep. And in the middle of the night, I realized the mask had fallen off my head. And so, you know, what the heck? Anyway, the next day, I realized I don't think I programmed that thing right to even flash at all. So this time before sleep, I spent all this time, you know, making sure this bloody thing was going to work. Now I'm driving down 13th Street and the snow was falling. And all of a sudden, a car spins out and goes into the ditch and their red lights start flashing. And I'm driving behind them thinking, red lights? Oh, yeah, I put on that mask, that sleep mask. And oh, this has to be a dream. I float out of the car, go on and have a big lucid adventure. But in the morning, I realized I still had not programmed that thing correctly, and it had not gone off in the middle of the night. It was my expectation that it was going to go off, that I was going to see red lights. And so the expectation allowed me to have the experience, which resulted in lucidity. So sometimes that's how it is, even for, you know, an ounce or two of caffeine. Just by doing that little thing, you've kind of increased your expectation. Oh, you know, this time I'm going to fool the body and the mind, and I'm going to become lucid by, you know, drinking 2 ounces of tea. Did it physiologically help? Maybe a little bit, but the mental component is like 10 times greater.
Now let's talk about, you know, the transfer of lucid healing to lucid living. Healing is my major sort of, not obsession, but it's something that I'm very familiar with physically over, you know, 30 years. So watching physical transformation is kind of another day in the office for me, real time. Now, I wouldn't even attempt to apply it to any sort of round peg to a square hole type of scenario. It's just a version of Taoism where we converge the past, present, and future, and you're able to manipulate. It's pliable what is perceived reality, and then it translates into material distortion. You can actually witness and experience of physical healing. How does that meld with you? What's the most profound realization or effect that you've seen through your journey?
Well, here's what I would say. Oftentimes in people who apparently need a healing, you know, who have some issue, oftentimes I agree with Jane Roberts, who's the author of the Seth material, that oftentimes it's blocked creativity. There's something going on in their life that they want to express, but they feel incapable of expressing it. And as a result, you know, sometimes illness occurs or ailments occur and that sort of thing. So the one thing that I would say is as you become more and more aware of what's going through your mind, you'll oftentimes too become aware of those times where negative thinking or, oh, this is impossible, or I could do this except for these things holding me back, or whatever it is, you know, my childhood upbringing, you know, and the people at work, you know, whatever, they're the problem. I don't have a problem. They're the problem. And they're keeping me from whatever. So sometimes they have kind of a long genesis. One thing that I would say is developing kind of an attitude of flexibility. oftentimes is enough to move forward. Just becoming more flexible in how you approach things. Because if you always have the same response and the same reaction, it'll be like a recurring nightmare. The thing comes up. What's your response? Oh, you fight it or you flee. You fight it or you flee. And oftentimes what you see in dreaming is when you come up with a new creative response and do that in the recurring nightmare or the recurring dream, then the nightmare ceases because now you've come up with a new response. And so oftentimes, that's part of I think the healing process. One time, I remember a friend called me up from the Boulder area, and he said, I crashed on my bike the other day and I broke my right hand. He says, I'm in the visual world where I have to use my right hand for all my work, and now my right hand is broken. He says, you believe that you basically create the events for a reason, that they're just not happening just because of bad luck or accidents or whatever. They're happening because of reason. He goes, help me understand why I would break my hand and be in this situation. And I go, okay, tell me what was going on in your head, the month or two before you broke your hand. Oh, I had to work so hard, and I'm a sole proprietor, and I have to do all the work, and doing all these sketches and everything. Just had to do them all the time to raise money and stuff. And I go, well, what about all your other hobbies? Hobbies. Playing the Brazilian drums and doing all that. Oh, I put all that stuff aside, because I just had to keep going. How'd that make you feel? He said, well, I really hated it because I really wanted a break. And I go, okay, well, you broke your arm, so you did receive a break. So what's been the benefit now that you've broken your arm? And he goes, you know what? Now all my friends from the Brazilian Drumming Association, they drop off food at my house. They come and sit with me and talk. Now I interact with them because I was ignoring them for 2 or 3 months because I was so crazy about earning more money. And, another thing happened. Now I've called up my competitors and I've asked them, could you please help me finish this project so I can get paid here, in a couple of weeks and whatever. And so now instead of fighting those people, I reached out to them to ask me to help. And all of a sudden I go, so how does that make you feel? And he goes, oh, well, now all of a sudden I feel reconnected. I'm not full of fear about the money. Now I see my friends will help me. Even my competitors will come out and help me. I go, so do you see why you might have created this situation, breaking your arm in a bicycle accident or breaking your wrist or whatever? And he goes, I see now that I created this situation in order to get back on the proper track. And so a lot of times, some of these accidents and stuff, there's actually a whole kind of psychological underpinnings on why they occurred. People think random stuff happens. Almost inevitably, if you really sit down and think about it, you'll realize that there were precursors, that there were mental, emotional, or spiritual precursors that were behind it.
It is. It's fascinating how it returns. In essence, we refer to reality as the great bellows within Taoism. You're contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. So to laser point the blatantly obvious, everything is an iteration of self. Mind over matter, matter over mind. All is one, one is all. Everything is a construct. Your body, yourself, is nothing more than the cosmos, and you are the animation to that, vice versa. It's an interplay of the symbiotic dance of yin and yang.
Apparently in Buddhist Dream Yoga, to be part of the Buddhist Dream Yoga program, you get accepted to a 3-year Buddhist Dream Yoga monastery. And I remember after my first book came out, this guy wrote me and he said, I'm the abbot of a Buddhist monastery, our Buddhist temple here in Europe. And I want to tell you that your book here, Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self, explained to me everything that those monks were telling me in my 3-year program. But by reading it in a Western version like you have here, finally I got it. And he says, this is incredible that someone like you, who didn't really, have any training in Buddhism or let alone Buddhist dream yoga, would basically write a Buddhist book and never use a Buddhist term in the whole bloody thing, and explained it all. But one of the first lessons in the Dream Yoga Monastery is all this a dream. And so the monks are walking around, all this a dream, all this a dream. Here's what they're not saying. They're not saying that all of this is unimportant, or all of this is fantasy, or all of this is, just whatever. They're not saying that. What they all are saying is a dream is a creation of the mind. Everybody's dreams are different because we have different minds here, but they're projecting out there for you to relate with your own mental, emotional energies, your own beliefs and expectations, your own focus and intent. And so what they're trying to say is a dream or a lucid dream is a creation of the mind. The hard thing to accept is this too, this waking reality, in large part, is a creation of the mind. And so again, this is what people have to kind of get through. This is the first lesson at a Buddhist dream yoga monastery. This is the first lesson. We're creating this. And how do you see that? You can use my supersized and neutral belief. Oh, I have the most beautiful hair in America. No one has better hair than me. And within 5 or 6 days, what are you doing with your hair? Are you using a new shampoo? Oh, your hair is glowing today. It's like, I'm not saying nothing. I'm not doing anything different. It gets reflected back to you. So again, that's where I think, that we have to come to kind of this basic understanding that it pretty much starts, traverses, and ends with the mind. You've got to understand how the mind is connected here. And then as you do, then probably if you're smart, you'll get in touch with your larger awareness. And then you'll begin to redefine what you are and what the mind is and all. I remember as a teenager, I would constantly bug myself, like, who am I? Who am I? I was constantly asking myself that. And finally, it all came to an end when one time I heard this kind of inner voice tell me, you are what you let yourself become. And boy, I kicked that around in my head for the next 3 decades. You are what you let yourself become. And that's when I realized there's no blockages, there's no fences except the ones I accept. And when I let those fences go, if I let myself become it, then that's when, the full expression of kind of integrating with your inner awareness, becomes more plausible and more likely. But until I let go of the limiting beliefs, until I let go of those fears and concerns, all that was kind of in my way and wouldn't let me become what I could allow myself to become. And so anyway, it's a long process. It's a journey. It's definitely a way. But it's great that people are investigating, this as a way to connect with their inner awareness.
Yeah, it can be Groundhog Day if you choose it to be.
And
It's a within Taoism we refer to this as Shen Gong. It's spirit power. Yeah. You're able to have imperium dominion over the material. Through the iteration of energy. For metaphysics of Tao, the highest point of awareness is the animation, which is the mother, the primordial mother, the void. She animates consciousness. Consciousness animates the spirit animates energy. Energy animates the body, which is the material distortion. Material is nothing more than a lower frequential energy potential. And once you actualize through Shen, which is attention, intention, spirit becomes alive within a material world, and then you can start playing with distortion and returning it to wholeness.
Right. So when you get on the lucid dreaming path, I think at some point you have to ask yourself, what is my intent? What is my intent here? I'm writing all these dreams down in my dream journal. I'm focusing on this, that, and the other. What's my intent? Maybe it's to heal my bad knee. That's your intent. Maybe it's to understand the actual nature of reality. That might be your intent. But I'll tell you, you'll go about as far as your intent. One of the unfortunate things about lucid dreaming is how fun it is. As soon as you become lucidly aware, you can fly around, you can have lucid dream sex, you can do all sorts of wild and crazy things. And you can. And I'm not asking any people not to explore that. You might have to do something wild and crazy for 100 times before you finally realize, this is fundamentally empty. Done it 100 times, it's empty. And then you can let it go. Then you're free of it. Then you're free of that energies and you can let it go. So I don't want anyone to deny anything and then kind of create a shadow energy that's actually following you around, but you're doing such a great job of denying it. You aren't actually aware of it. But that's one of the traps of lucid dreaming. Some people are great lucid dreamers. Have they ever done anything? Well, they had fun and they shot out, fireballs out of their hand and they, flew around and they did this and that. But do you know anything about yourself? Have you resolved any fears? Have you interacted with your inner awareness? Have you healed yourself or healed your emotions? Have you accessed creativity in any kind of thoughtful way to support yourself in your life? And a lot of them say no. In fact, some of the lucid dreamers who lucid dream every night, and they taught themselves as small children how to become lucidly aware to deal with nightmare figures, and they lucid dream all the time. I mean, they call me up and they say, now, how do you heal yourself? Because what happens is they have like a little kid's understanding of lucid dreaming. Oh, this is a dream. Oh, now I can get away from the monsters. So they run, they fight, they flee, whatever. But I'll never forget one time that I was given a talk in Seattle. This guy comes in and he says, your second book, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple, saved my life. And I go, okay, that's nice. Anyway, his wife came up to me and says, no, your second book saved his life. And I go, okay, tell me the story. This guy told me that he grew up in a totally dysfunctional family. People were always fighting, were undermining each other. It was just a nasty, nasty family. And he said because of that, he had nightmares almost every night. And he would fight off the nasty figures or run away from them. And then he taught himself how to become lucidly aware. Oh, here's that nasty figure again. Oh, this is a dream. Oh, now I go better go hide. Anyway, so that's what his lucid dreaming in life was like. He'd become lucidly aware, but basically he just ran or would fight. Anyway, so he's reading my second book, and in there I say, how do you deal with aggressive dream figures in a lucid dream? It's a dream. So what I said is there's a couple things you can do. First, you can ask, who are you? Find out what you're dealing with. You might be fighting your fear of success. God only knows what you're fighting. I mean, ask it, who are you? The other thing is you should send it what it lacks. So if it's full of hate, send it love. Normally, when you start sending love to a hateful dream figure, it'll immediately calm down. It'll begin to shrink. It'll be a little kid who wants a hug. And if you totally accept it and totally, unconditionally send it love, it'll burst into light, and that light energy will come into you because it's a projection of your own stuff and it's coming back to the creator. So anyway, this guy reading the book, he goes, oh my God, I could send love to these dream figures. I could send compassion and understanding to all these ones who are trying to kill me and trying to harm me. And he starts doing that in all of his lucid dreams. He says within 2 weeks, his coworkers at work are now helping him and all. Instead of fighting him like they would always do or undermining him like they'd always do, now they're helping him. And he goes, wow, things are really changing at work. And then he said, after 4 weeks of sending love and compassion to every dream figure in his lucid dreams, he said, suddenly his family was talking about spiritual ideas of forgiveness and grace and compassion. And he said, it was like I entered a whole new world. He said, my entire family changed. He said, I never said one thing about any of this. I just began in my inner world sending love and compassion and understanding and acceptance to hostile, angry, negative dream figures. He said, reading your book totally changed my life. And he said, you can't believe how my life is, totally different than it was now that I've responded to things differently. Now, here's the lucid living component to that. You go to work every day and you really dislike that person over there. They irritate you. They do this, they do that. Think of it as a mental creation. Think of it as a wonderful challenge. Every time you go to work, begin to send them love and compassion and understanding. Just make it a practice every day. Love, compassion, understanding, acceptance. Love, compassion, understanding, acceptance. I'll tell you, in 2 or 3 weeks, that person will love you without even knowing why. And you will also, in a sense, have a deeper understanding and appreciation of them. It will totally transform things. So that's why, again, we send out mental energy, it gets reflected back to us. Oh, people are jerks. People are obnoxious. Oh, what just came into the office? And I'm not obnoxious jerk. It was your thinking attracted it into your experience. You want to change it? Change your thinking. I love that person. I accept them. Oh, they have some good qualities. Just start doing that every day. Within a matter of weeks, you'll see a fundamental change.
This has been a refreshing, reformative snapback of such a powerful wisdom teaching that you share with the world. And I'm very grateful that you've taken the time to come in here today and elaborate, expand, extend on the wisdom teaching that you shared in the first episode, which, by the way, the audience can go back and watch Robert's first episode here on the channel. Incredible insight, incredible mastery, amazing wisdom that you share with the world. I'm going to ask everyone to go out and look for Robert's books. Do you have any other methods of communication? Is it through the books only? Do you have any sort of like programs that you may teach people this stuff on, or let the audience know more about where we could find you?
Yeah, normally each spring here in the United States, I'll do an online event with the Institute of Noetic Sciences with ions.com. So normally around March, April, May each year, I'll do a 30-day online event with them, along with some of my lucid dreaming friends, Ed Kellogg and Jillian Thetford. Also, people can check out what I'm up to at lucidadvice.com. But anyway, it's so nice to talk to you today. And I really appreciate everyone who's kind of on their own journey, and because I know all of us being on our own journey will help us in our own way work through these issues. Lucid dreaming might not be everybody's path. We all dream. Every night we spend 2 hours in the dream state. And that means by the time you're 24, you've spent 2 entire years in dreaming. What do you know about it? And so that's why I love dreaming. Dreaming helps me connect and oftentimes shows me what I'm failing to look at. And that's the incredible thing, because in the waking world, hey, I love looking at this, and this. I don't want to look at any of that over there. But sometimes my dreaming self will say, no, look at what you're ignoring. There's something there. And that has led me to greater and greater growth. So Sigmund Freud called dreaming the royal road to the unconscious. And so whichever path you're on, I hope dreaming's a part of it. So,
well, I want to thank you again, Robert, for coming in here today. And I'm very grateful that you're a friend of the channel, that I'm getting to know you as a mastered wisdom teacher. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you. Thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.